Shocking news from the world of entertainment. Stellar Blade, the new action-adventure game developed by the Korean studio Shift Up, hasn't even been released yet, and it's already a success. How is that possible? Especially given the overly sexualized portrayal of the main protagonist? Or is it really a powerful backlash against the woke movement? Well, yes and no. On one hand, Western gaming and movies are faltering in their efforts to promote true equality, which should be founded on the respect for and celebration of differences, on the belief that these differences deserve equal dignity and respect. However, the industry seems to waver between two equally flawed extremes. The first is an Aristotelian notion that claims a woman is inferior to a man based on sexual differences. The other extreme, equally erroneous, advocates for erasing these differences altogether in the name of equality, suggesting that homogenization is the solution to inequality. From my perspective, this latter approach is just as problematic as the first. It fits perfectly with today's global technocracy, or, as we might call it, today's planetary civilization of technology, which generally promotes homogenization, standardization, and a blurring of distinctions. This results in a neutralization of culture and identity, misguidedly labeled as equality, which should more accurately be termed uniformity. Paradoxically, while the civilization of technology strives for universal sameness, it also, and inevitably, fosters an ever-increasing inequality among human beings. This grim scenario, which I choose to call mass homogenization or indistinction, is, as even diverse economists like Piketty and Stiglitz teach us, fundamentally based on the ever-growing disparity among people. Piketty notably states, "Inequality is not necessarily bad in itself. The key question is to decide whether it is justified, whether there are reasons for it." Joseph Stiglitz, alongside Piketty as profound critics of this age of inequality within the capitalist paradigm, illustrate how globalization, far from fostering the spread of rights and opportunities, actually propagates homogenization and inequality, effectively homogenizing the entire planet under a veneer of classist disparity focused on the mechanics of market exchange. Stiglitz points out, rather than justice for all, we are evolving into a system of justice for those who can afford it. We have banks that are not only too big to fail, but too big to be held accountable. In discussing the implications of this homogenization within gender relations, which I refer to as the unisex model, it becomes evident that merely acknowledging the differences between male and female can be seen as a precursor to inequality. To combat this perceived inequality, society might begin to assert that males and females do not naturally exist as distinct categories, advocating instead for a unisex, undifferentiated model where each individual is free to choose their identity, akin to the consumer model where every desire must correspond to a right. If such a right is not recognized, it is dismissed as mere caprice. This scenario represents what many consider unacceptable discrimination. However, this is the paradox of the consumer society. The legitimate and rightful struggle for equality between males and females is twisted into a fight for indistinction, which often coexists with the highest degrees of inequality and the persistent economic subjugation of women. I argue, as did the feminists of the 1960s, that recognizing the inherent specificity of the feminine, which is distinct from the masculine, is the first step towards real equality. This does not imply a blending of differences, but rather the recognition and legitimization of these differences. It is crucial, therefore, to clearly distinguish among three often conflated aspects in contemporary debate: sex, gender, and orientation. Sex, as I've noted, relates to biological attributes that precede any social or personal choice. It is the chromosomal reality of being born male or female. Gender, however, relates to how individuals express their sexuality within their cultural context. This expression has evolved significantly from historical norms, as evidenced by the changing roles of fatherhood and motherhood, reflecting shifts in societal expectations and responsibilities. These changes demonstrate that while gender may be influenced by sex, it is not solely determined by biological factors. So why does this matter for Stellar Blade? The developers understand their audience. They know that controversy sells, and that giving players what they want, even if it sparks debate, is good for business. The more people talk about the game, the better it sells, regardless of the game's quality. See, it all boils down to recognizing distinctions, a simple yet often overlooked principle that can clarify many of the controversies we see today. Starting from a legitimate demand for women's equality and ending up misattributing old biases not only fails to solve the problem, but perpetuates it. It's like flipping a cube. It will always remain a cube. Like in an hourglass, they shift from one side to another, but always remain biased. Biases shift, but don't disappear. True equality respects differences, homogenization denies them, and, well, perpetuates injustice. Thanks for watching. If this is the kind of videos you are into, hit subscribe and get notified when I release the next one. Happy mindful gaming and see you next time.